What's up everyone and welcome back to the World History Channel. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button today. Let's get started. 14 unusual facts about Beatrix Potter, the creator of Peter Rabbit. If the name Beatrix Potter doesn't quite ring a bell, the name Peter Rabbit surely does. The fictional rabbit who spawned a series of books about talking animals and became a household name is the Brain Bunny of Potter, born in 1866 in Kensington, England. Beatrix Potter loved animals as a child and spent a lot of her time drawing and painting them, including hedgehogs and frogs. Benjamin Bouncer was her first pet rabbit, and he went on vacation with the Potter family to Scotland. Potter's second rabbit, Peter Piper, was a trickster and her constant companion, and these bunnies laid the foundation for the future Beatrix Potter books. Potter taught herself biology and mycology, creating detailed sketches and studies of the natural world around her, and even attempted to publish an academic paper when she was 20. But in the days long before women were respected and included in academic circles, Potter's work was rejected. Instead, she eventually found her niche in a burgeoning book genre, children's literature. Based on an illustrated letter she had written to a sick child, her first book, The Tale of Peter Rabbit, was published in 1902. Much like her American contemporary Laura Ingalls Wilder, Potter's main loves were a simple life and observing small things around her. She kept writing until 1930, and then she focused much of her time on farming. She gave the British National Trust 15 farms and more than 4,000 acres of land when she died in 1943. She once used chloroform to kill a rabbit. In 1997, UK tabloids blew up after the Times of London examined one of Potter's diaries and discovered she boiled and then dissected a squirrel out of scientific curiosity, and probably committed other animal murders in her scientific quest. She reportedly asked a gamekeeper to shoot the creature for her, which she used as inspiration for the character Squirrel Nutkin, and it was also believed that one of her characters, Jeremy Fisher, was inspired by a frog that she dissected. The Times also noted that she killed a rabbit using chloroform, and subsequently, the beloved children's author and heretofore believed naturalist was decried as an animal killer and bunny boiler. Tabloids had a field day with this information, but ultimately the timeless charm of her books and Potter's well-documented love for all things living and natural saved her reputation. She studied fungi and discovered something scientific about them, but nobody took her seriously. Potter, whose father was a London attorney, was a self-educated biologist and mycologist who developed her drawing skills while studying fungi, animals and plants. Although it was a fad of the Victorian times for women to make sketches of nature and biology, Potter was reportedly more dedicated to the details and science behind her art than the average person. She also made a veritable scientific discovery and wrote about it in a paper titled, On the Germination of the Spores of Agaricinae. She submitted the groundbreaking mycological research to London's males-only Linnean Society in 1897, when she was 20, but they rejected it. While in her 20s, Potter continued to make hundreds of accurate illustrations based on her observations of fungi. Her uncle sent the Royal Botanical Gardens a book containing a collection of her drawings, but they also didn't take it seriously. Her fiancé died a month after they got engaged. Beatrix Potter finally self-published Peter Rabbit when she was 36 years old, after it had been rejected from 6 different publishers. She printed 250 copies, which were so well received that a publisher offered her a contract. She became very close to her editor at that publishing firm, Norman Warren, and they got engaged in July 1905. Despite their disapproval of Potter's social standing and profession, she accepted his proposal. About a month later, Warren suddenly died from a blood disorder that was most likely leukemia while his fiancée was away visiting family members in Wales. Before getting married to lawyer William Healis in 1913, it is said that Potter was devastated and remained single for a number of years. Peter Piper was the name of the real Peter Rabbit. Peter Piper, a Belgian rabbit that Potter owned, served as Potter's source of inspiration for her story about Peter Rabbit. She called him her affectionate companion, and wrote that she bought him for a fair price when the rabbit was just a baby. She became famous later because his first name was used in the illustrated books. In one of her own private first editions of The Tale of Peter Rabbit, she wrote, "In affectionate remembrance of poor old Peter Rabbit, who died on the 26th of January 1901 at the end of his 9th year. Whatever the limitations of his intellect or outward shortcomings of his fur, and his ears and toes, his disposition was uniformly amiable and his temper unfailingly sweet. An affectionate companion and a quiet friend. But Peter Piper wasn't the first rabbit she owned. That one was named Benjamin Bouncer, who you may know from the tale of Benjamin Bunny. The Peter Rabbit franchise got its start with a letter to a boy with scarlet fever. In 1893, Potter wrote a letter to a 5-year-old boy named Noel Moore, who was the son of her governess friend Annie Moore. The boy had scarlet fever, and Potter was attempting to cheer him up during his recovery. She accompanied the letter with pictures and watercolors she'd sketched. She wrote, "I don't know what to write to you, so I shall tell you story about 4 little rabbits, whose names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail and Peter." The boy's mother, Potter's friend, was so impressed she pressured Potter to turn the letters into a book. Potter borrowed Annie's original letter to Noel back in 1900 and used it as a template for her first book, The Tale of Peter Rabbit. She wanted her books to be small enough that kids could easily hold them. Potter advocated for including black and white illustrations on every page to keep children interested, and made her books small so that they could be easily held by young hands. She was turned down by 6 publishers because they wanted a larger, more expensive book with color illustrations. Potter decided to publish the books herself in black and white after receiving multiple rejections because she wanted her stories to be affordable. One of the publishers that had previously rejected her decided to give her books another chance, this time on Potter's terms, after her printing sold out and became so popular. Frederick Warne & Co. began publishing her books in 1902, the same Warne who later became Potter's fiancé. Throughout her life, she was the owner of 15 different farms. Potter bought and owned 15 different farms over the course of her life. She took good care of them and eventually gave up writing to work full-time as a farmer. She was an expert in sheep farming, and it is said that as a shepherdess, she was fully involved in making hay, clearing mud, and other farmstead tasks. She wrote that whenever she was on her farm with her animals, she was in her happy place. She used a secret code to write a journal. Potter started writing in a journal when she was a teenager using a secret code that wasn't decoded until 1966. Potter wrote about her parents' controlling nature and her struggle in dealing with them as she lived with them into her 20s. She admitted to occasional bouts of depression and health issues. However, she was determined to stay positive and noted, "I must draw however poor the result. I'll do something at some point." She had both a business mind and an artistic heart. Even though Harry Potter's books sometimes take the reader to dark places, they always have happy endings. She frequently used challenging words in her writing to teach children more advanced vocabulary. Potter advised her publisher to copyright her characters and was also very interested in marketing her books. In 1903, she created the first Peter Rabbit doll and patented it. In addition, Potter created board games and tea sets to complement her characters. She gave up writing to work full-time as a farmer. After Potter married William Healy's in 1913, she wrote and illustrated a handful of new books, including Johnny Town Mouse, but her output dropped considerably, especially after 1918 when her vision started to fail. In 1923, she and her husband bought a sheep farm. She had completely stopped writing by 1930. Potter was elected president of the Herdwick Sheep Breeders Association after becoming passionate about farming. When she died from cancer in 1943, many of her neighbors didn't realize she was a famous children's author. At the height of her career, W.H. wrote between 2 and 3 stories a year. She published more than 30 books, including The Tale of Squirrel Nutkin, The Tale of Mrs. Tiggywinkle, and The Tale of Mr. Jeremy Fisher. More than 100 million copies of books have been sold worldwide. The Tale of Kitty in Boots was found and published posthumously in 2013. Joe Hanks, the editor of Penguin Random House Children's, discovered The Tale of Kitty in Boots while working on the further tale of Peter Rabbit with Emma Thompson. The book, which was 102 years old, includes familiar characters such as Mrs. Ribby, Tabitha Twitchit, Tiggy Winkle, and Mr. Todd. There is even a reference to a rabbit wearing a blue jacket who resembles an older Peter Rabbit. There were no Potter original illustrations for the book, so popular children's book author and illustrator Quentin Blake finished the story by adding his own illustrations. The Tale of Kitty in Boots was published in 2013. She often used her own pets as models for her illustrations. Potter used her pets as models because she wanted her illustrations to look real. She put tiny clothing on her pet hedgehog in order to draw Mrs. Tiggywinkle. The hedgehog reportedly yawned pathetically when Potter took too much time to draw the spiny mammal. Potter never lost her affection for small animals. She carried many of them from childhood into adulthood and even carried her pets, a frog, a bat, and a lizard, when she went on vacation with her parents well into her 30s. As a child, her parents were very controlling, and her only friends were animals. Helen Beatrix Potter was born on July 28, 1866, in Bolton Gardens, Kensington, England. She was mostly raised by governesses and servants because her father was a wealthy barrister. Before her brother was born when she was about 5 years old, she barely played with other kids. After he was sent to boarding school, animals were her constant companions. She played with mice, frogs, and bunnies, but one of her most unusual pets was a hedgehog, whom she'd reportedly dress up. Years later, as an adult, she had another pet hedgehog who proved inspiration and artistic muse for Potter's book Mrs. Tiggywinkle. She was proud of her sheep breeding prizes even though she never received any literary awards. Potter never received lifetime recognition for her writing. In fact, children's literature as a genre was literally in its infancy stage when Potter was an active author. However, she did receive many sheep breeding prizes. She displayed her Herdwick sheep at agricultural events in the Lake District in England and won several trophies. She was very proud of her farming accomplishments.